This is Privacy Notes, the podcast. Ever so often, we are required to provide our personal information, either for public or private goods and services. It could be while trying to buy a new SIM card or purchasing a new mobile phone. It could even be while trying to apply for a job or after you have been offered a job. In some instances, it could be during the process of announcing the birth of a new child or notifying the coroner over someone's demise. Whatever the instance is, we are trusting someone to protect our personal information. A study in 2018 found that the personal information of an average subject was worth about $240. With over 2.6 billion users on Facebook alone, the cost of personal data on the social microblogging is about $642 billion. This makes the sale of personal data quite lucrative, doesn't it? So what happens when those you have trusted to protect your personal information breach that trust? On this episode of Privacy Notes, we will discuss the current privacy rights laws in a bid to help you appreciate it better. We'll also have a conversation about the current laws on personal data protection. Michael Olugbenga and Urena Okone of Tax Tech have more. Welcome to Privacy Notes, the podcast. It's been quite a while. I've actually been away for about 3 weeks now, and I hope you missed me. If you say you didn't miss me, I'll feel very, very bad. But it's fine though. It's fine. At least I know Rena has been holding the fort and been doing an amazing job. As you remember, Privacy Notes, the podcast, is brought to you by Tax Technologies Limited, Tax Tech, and the NDPR Academy. Tax Tech is your plug for all things related to software solutions development, cybersecurity, and data protection compliance. While the NDPR Academy is your plug for trainings on data protection. In today's episode, we'll be looking at data protection and the law. Is the law on your side? It's actually a question there. I won't call it a rhetorical one, but then we'll get to see much more in the course of this episode. I still have Urena here with me. Urena, you want to say hello to our people?
Hello, everyone. I'm sure you're glad to have Mr. Benga back here in the studio.
You actually call him Mr. Benga. Oh, it's really. All right, anyway, it feels good to be back. I've actually missed being in the studio doing this. I mean, it's actually become a very favorite thing to do. So yes, it feels quite good to be back. And Urena, again, thank you for holding the fort for so long.
My pleasure.
I almost didn't want to come back anymore. I felt that you're doing a fantastic job, so there was really no need for me to even come back. But yeah, it feels really good to be back. So when we come back, we'll be doing much more, telling you what we're going to be discussing in today's episode. We'll be back in a moment. This is the Privacy Notes, the podcast.
And we are back. This is still Privacy Notes, the podcast, brought to you by Tax Tech and the NDPR Academy. We are still discussing about data protection and the law. Is the law on your side? Okay, so what is the law governing data protection in Nigeria, Benga, in your opinion? So what's the law? Is there any law that's actually governing data protection in Nigeria?
Well, currently, the existing law that governs data protection in Nigeria is actually the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, as instituted by NITDA. And NITDA, of course, we've mentioned this in the course of a lot of times in the course of all our episodes. NITDA basically means a National Information Technology Development Agency. So NITDA is responsible for fostering the course of data privacy and other related laws in Nigeria. So they actually put this law through the NDPR. So if you look at a quick overview of the NDPR, what is the NDPR? It was actually instituted on 25th of January 2019, and there are about 4 main objectives that the NDPR actually aims to push. The first one basically is the safeguarding of the rights of the data subject to the privacy of their data, to ensure that your rights as a data subject, and what data subject again? A data subject basically is every citizen in Nigeria, or everyone who resides, every resident of Nigeria. So basically, all your personal data, your personal information is expected to be safeguarded, and NITA tries, through the NDPR, to safeguard the rights of the data. Number 2 there is actually to foster the safe conduct for transactions involving the exchange of personal data. So of course, in transactions, a lot of personal data is exchanged. A lot of sensitive personal data might be exchanged. So through the NDPR, NITA aims to foster the safe conduct for transactions to ensure that in course of the exchange of a personal data, it is actually protected. And of course, number 3 is the prevention of the manipulation of your personal data, because in the course of exchange of personal data, a lot of times a lot of manipulations could take place. A lot of wrong things that are not expected to be done could be done with your personal data. So NITA through the NDPR hopes to also ensure that this manipulation is not done. And the 4th and last one of the objectives of the NDPR is to ensure that Nigerian businesses remain competitive in international trade through the best practice safeguards afforded by the NDPR. So you see now that data protection basically is not just beyond one person, it actually goes far into individuals and organizations collectively. Basically looks at people from the side of being one person and also from the side of being a collective unit in terms of organizations there. So that's a quick overview of what the NDPR does there.
All right. Thank you so much. That was just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure if you attend our data protection classes hosted by the NDPR Academy, you'll be able to learn more and know more about all these objectives of the NDPR. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
And we are back. This is still Privacy Notes, the podcast brought to you by TaxTech and the NDPR Academy. And before we went on break, we highlighted 4 objectives of the NDPR. And you're actually going to be learning much more of this in the course of our NDPR Academy classes, the 3 classes coming up sometime in September, precisely September 18th, 2020. You need to begin to plan ahead for that. And the foundation course, that is the master, the practitioner, or we'll call it the master course, as will be coming up sometime in September 25th and 26th. So yes, what we just gave you basically was a sneak preview into most of Module 1, basically, which is the introduction to Nigeria privacy rights laws. So stay tuned. Go on our website, www.ndpracademy.ng, and you find all the details you need to register for this class. I still have Urina here with me. Urina, I have a very quick question. Still on the topic, we're talking about data protection and the law. Is the law on your side? So I thought we'd just have a very quick conversation before I will be bringing in our guest. He's going to be joining us over on a call shortly. When we have data breaches, let's imagine that as an individual now, imagine you have maybe one of the organizations that have your data as a data subject now. They breach your data. You find out that your data somehow is misused. So what do you do right now? Do you want to go report that to the police station, or what would you naturally want to do first?
So you know that, well, in Nigeria, I don't want to come at the police, but you know that this might be an inefficient way to go about it. But there is no platform that I can go and say, oh, my data has been breached, I need to report this. I need to just, instead of me going up and down, I can just, go online and just go to a platform and just put in my details and say, there's been a data breach. Currently, there is none. And it's a sad case because it means that, my data can just be misused and you just go unnoticed. Yeah.
For me, I think that answer, yes, it's debatable though. Yeah, we think there is none at this time. But later on, we'll be bringing Mr. Olumide Babalola. He's actually a data protection expert and incidentally a member of the NDPR Academy faculty. So he's going to be discussing very quickly with us a few questions we have for him. We'll also be looking at touching on the issues of when data breaches occur. Is there actually a platform? How do you get to report this? What are the procedures, the bureaucratic process we have in place right now? Do they actually allow you get, justice in the event of a data breach? At least even before we even talk about justice, there should be even a way or a format where you could actually go and actually pass this relevant information of the breach of your data.
So if there's a breach of your data, according to the NDPR, 2 things can occur. If it's a data controller that's dealing with more than 10,000 data subjects, there can be a fine of 2% of your annual gross revenue or 10 million naira, whichever is greater. Now, if it's a data controller that's dealing with less than 10,000 data subjects, there can be 1% of your annual gross revenue or the sum of 2 million naira, whichever is greater. So, how sustainable are these penalties? Is this in reality? Does it really occur? Just, let us know, Benga.
Well, in my opinion, yes, it's realistic, it's sustainable, but then the challenge now is that I think it's a question of the willpower, right? So NICTA has been doing quite a good job so far. It's through the DPCOs in ensuring that there is relevant compliance with the NDPR. But in terms of the enforcement, because we still have data breaches that keep occurring every now and then, I think the enforcement bit of it is still, there's still a lot to write them about at this time. So we're just trying to see what can actually be done. And, one of the things we've tried to do at Tax Tech now is come up with some solutions. I mean, something that's around this where at least let's even have a platform where people can actually even report this complaint. Like you mentioned earlier on, if a data breach occurs currently now, do you even have a platform where you can actually even report to? We'll be discussing it shortly in the course of this episode. Before we do that, we'll be bringing a guest, Mr. Olumide Babalola. We mentioned his name earlier on, to actually, answer one or two questions for us in the course of this episode.
We'll take a short break and we'll be right back with our guest, Mr. Olumide Babalola.
And you're welcome back to Privacy Notes, the podcast. So now we have with us Mr. Olumide Babalola. I'll just run through a very quick profile of his. Mr. Olumide Babalola is a prolific and consummate digital rights, consumer rights, privacy and data protection lawyer. His rich and diverse digital rights litigation experience spans across all superior courts of records in Africa and Nigeria, including ECOWAS Community Court of Justice. He has specifically litigated on digital privacy, cybercrime, hate speech, freedom of information, online freedom of expression, passage of laws, protecting digital rights, among others. Mr. Babalola is a seasoned conference speaker at local and international fora. He is also the managing partner of Olumide Babalola LP, a NICTA licensed data protection compliance organization. And Mr. Babalola happens to also be on the faculty of the NDPR Academy. Mr. Babalola, you're welcome to Privacy Notes, the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome, sir. So in today's episode, we're actually looking at data protection and the law, with a question that is the law on your side. We're doing this basically for our listeners. So we won't be taking much of your time, sir. I just wanted to ask a very quick question there. In terms of the laws that regulate data protection in Nigeria particularly now, what is your take? What's the place of the law? Has the law done enough as it is right now? Basically, just in your opinion as an expert on this area of focus, can you just give us your impression on what the place of the law as far as data protection in Nigeria is concerned so far?
Thank you very much again for the invitation. So we came late to the market in terms of regulating or legislating on data protection. Data protection, I would say, has been prominent in Europe and other parts of the world as far back as the 70s. But Nigeria just issued its own general data protection law or regulation in 2019. So that was like how many years now? 30 years or more late to the game, but it's still never late to pick up. So we have several data protection regulations, but they are specific, not general. So we have the Money Laundering Act. Yes, so we have the Child Rights Act. So we have the Constitution. So we have the Credit Reporting Act. So we have several other specific laws that provide for data protection, but not the general one that takes care of the subject in a holistic manner, like we have in the NDPR. And of course, the NDPR has its own shortcomings, so many shortcomings, but it's always a good point to start from. So that's where we are, and we're taking it one step, one day at a time. So.
Okay. I have my colleague Urena Okone here. So, Urena, please, you had a question for Mr. Babalola.
Yes, sir. So what is your take on the level of NICTA's enforcement of the NDPR? Because it seems that some people don't still take, the NDPR seriously. So what do you think the level of enforcement on NICTA's part is?
So enforcement is in two folds. Enforcement as far as the regulators are concerned, and enforcement as far as citizens are concerned. So because sometimes this thing could also be self-regulatory and as well as citizens regulated. So as far as the statutory regulator is concerned, without sounding condescending, I'm not sure so much of enforcement has been done. Unofficially, we heard that a government agency was fined 1 million last year or early this year, but I have not seen that in any official communication. So as far as the regulators are concerned, I'm not sure so much has been done in terms of, I've not heard of any fine, I've not heard of any sanctions, I've not heard of any hearing so far. So maybe they are done, but
it's not in public domain per se.
Thank you very much. When it is not seen to be done, then we can safely assume it has not been done. But in terms of citizens enforcement, I mean, happily, people have started going to court on issues of data protection. I understand that about 2 or 3 citizens have taken Google to court on data breach, on right to be forgotten.
Is that in Nigeria now or internationally?
In Nigeria.
Oh.
I mean, in my own modest way, at least we have close to about 25 data protection cases that were litigated in court. Some of them public interest, some of them private interest.
I see.
And I heard that Templars, they are defending like 2 or 3 cases on behalf of Google that some other people have taken to court. So, well, that is not widespread, so to speak. But I think it's a startup point. But as far as execution, as far as enforcement is concerned, we are nowhere yet. But that does not stop anybody. That does not mean tomorrow anybody cannot file a case in court or take up the regulators on enforcement. But as far as we are concerned, I am not satisfied. So to speak, on enforcement yet.
Okay, one last question before you go, sir. Now, in terms of data breaches, so right now, as it is right now, I don't think there's any platform in Nigeria where in the event that your data is actually breached, that you could actually report this to. I'm just asking, are there any plans, at any point, are you aware of any right now by the regulators to bring up any of such into place anytime soon?
To bring up what, sorry?
It's sort of a platform that where citizens, data subjects and actually reports data breaches that occur,
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
But,
okay, because
I'm so sure if you suggest it to the regulator, they are always responsive to take it up. Maybe they will, in the nearest future, come up with something.
Okay. In the course of this podcast, we're still going to be discussing further about that. We're actually going to be talking about a platform that has been developed by TaxTech called the RDB. Basically, it's yet to be launched, but should be launched soon. That actually, it's going to be taking care of such issues like this.
You people are doing very well.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate the time. And of course, you are one of us too, as a member of the faculty of the NDPR Academy. So it's a joint effort. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Babalola. We appreciate the little time you've been able to give to us. And we believe that when next we call you, definitely we'll be able to have you again in the studio. All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We are still here. This is Privacy Notes, the podcast brought to you by TaxTech and the NDPR Academy. So our guest, Mr. Olumide Babalola, just gave us insights about the NDPR and the role of NIDA and if, they're doing good enough. So you spoke about an innovative solution by TaxTech, which is called RDB, and it's supposed to be a platform for reporting data breaches. Can you just let us know about this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ren. That is correct. So the RDB service basically is a helpline for data subjects whose data subject rights have been breached to register their complaints, like we established earlier on, and which also was corroborated by Mr. Babalola earlier on. I don't think there's actually no registered platform right now where data subjects are able to report their data breaches. I'm sure there are a lot of plans towards that, but we have been able to, go at the forefront of this to develop something. So the RDB service basically will, following the verification of the identity of the data subject, provide the data subject with prompt advice on how to get the breach resolved or redressed. So RDB's advice will typically be to give a preliminary opinion on the existence or non-existence of a data subject right breach, and then refer the data subject to the relevant law or data security enforcement agency or legal data protection service provider. We are also even looking at possibly having pro bono legal services for those who cannot maybe afford any relevant fees that should be paid for this. So we have a couple of legal service providers who can provide these pro bono services and all of that. So at least enforce their data subject rights in the event of a breach. The plan is that the RDB service is going to be both an online and offline helpline with sufficient coverage to allow all data subjects, whether online or offline, to access the RDB's toll-free or non-toll-free platforms. So it's an innovation that it's currently in progress and should be launched anytime very soon. We are concluding stages already on this, and any moment from now you should actually hear of the launch of this RDB platform, because we believe this is supposed to be what is going to help the data subjects. The data subjects' rights we feel it can be better enforced, at least with innovations like this, and that's what we're trying to do at TaxTech.
Wow, that seems amazing. I can't wait for it to be launched, and I'm sure that the citizens of Nigeria can't wait for it to be launched as well. So this is a wrap of episode 7 on data protection, and the law is the law on your side. Don't forget that we have classes coming up in September. That's from September 18th till September 26th. That's the Q3 2020 data protection classes. We have the foundation class and we have the practitioners class. Just go to www.ndpracademy.ng or send us an email at info@ndpracademy.ng and follow us on social media, NDPR Academy. We'll be glad to follow you back, and we'll be glad to respond to your questions that you have. And also TaxTech. Visit our website www.taxtech.com.ng to know more about our DB when it launches. All right, see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Privacy Notes, the podcast. On our next episode, we'll be discussing about Guide to Personal Data Processing, what you should know.